Okay. Great. So yeah, we're gonna wait to get started until a few more folks have a chance to trickle in. We might start around 8:05 or 8:10 at the latest.
Or 11:05 if you're in EST.
Yep, that's right. 10 past the hour is the latest we will start. But thank you all so much for coming. Really excited to have this panel discussion on becoming a leader in responsible quantum innovation. We're running out of space-filling things to ask the panel that don't have to do with the questions on the list. So everyone quick, be as awkward as possible.
Maybe I could give the panelists like a preview of how this is going to work. I'm going to repeat this when more people join, but basically we've got a couple questions planned that we're going to ask people, but then we're also going to have a Q&A open just throughout the session. So if someone poses a question in the chat that's relevant, I'll just throw it in there. And yeah, essentially that's how it's going to work. Any of the other panelists, if I ask a question to someone specifically and you feel like you have something to add to it, feel free to interject, to jump in at any point. This is not strict. I'm not gonna like force mute you guys when it's not your turn.
Yeah, the big goal is like we have some questions with some kind of specific topics in mind that we think certain panelists on here might be best placed to answer, but the goal is to create just an open and free-flowing discussion that I hope will evolve organically. Like I'm hoping our questions are just kind of a helpful kind of reference point to make sure that we stay on task. But if people have kind of riffing off of each other and really kind of getting into an unexpected direction that is very interesting and stimulating, we're going to let that happen. Absolutely. Let's actually maybe test the Q&A feature. So I'm going to call on Lauren again in the audience. Lauren, can you put a question? Do you see the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen? Can you put a question into the Q&A and we will see if we can see it? Anyone in the audience can do this as well. I'm just kind of testing out the systems, making sure everything's working.
I see it.
Lauren asks, how's your day going? Thank you, Shannon.
Shannon says, congrats on your wedding. That's
nice. Really appreciate that. Yeah, so the plan, I think, is for Kat to kind of pick out some of these questions as we're going along throughout and kind of repeat them for the panel, and the panel can answer them. Folks in the audience, if you want to direct a question to one specific person on the panel, feel free to include that in your question, or if you'd like everyone to answer it, you can just pose the question more broadly. But yeah, this is exciting. I hope that we can get everybody in the audience kind of participating throughout, so that we can kind of feel like this is a lively conversation, not just between us and the panelists, Kat and the panelists, but also just with the whole group we have here.
More people are joining. Hi, everyone.
Yeah, it's in my experience for most events like these, people really start filling in like 10 or so minutes past. People might trickle in throughout, but we'll get started in about 5 more minutes.
Sure. I've never used the webinar Zoom format, but this is nice. I like the Q&A feature. Oh yeah, also I've got the Q&A on my other monitor here, but if I miss something and what panelists you guys want to answer one of these questions, feel free to just let me know. Yeah.
Yeah, can the panelists, can you all see the Q&A?
Should be able to.
Yes.
Yep. Very cool. Yeah, we'll monitor that for you, but if you happen to glance at it and you see something you want to speak to, feel free to just answer that yourself. So Kat, when we get to the 10 past, I'm gonna switch into panelist mode and let you run the show. If you need anything from me, let me know, but I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Sounds good.
People are still coming in.
I want to apologize in advance also because my neighbor has a dog that is very like territorial. So whenever any kind of sound is made in my apartment, it starts barking. So I don't know if you guys are gonna hear. But if you hear a dog, that's why.
I'm sure your neighbor is very popular.
I don't mind it. I grew up with dogs, but it's a bit funny.
Yeah, we just adopted a foster, and I typically have work earlier than my partner, and she can always hear it when I get up, and he's usually the one who walks her because I've got to get on my computer. So around 7:30, 8, she starts making these high-pitched screechy noises.
Walk me now.
Yeah. She's a big sweetie. This is looking good. We've got almost 20 people in here. Maybe we can go ahead and get started.
Yeah, that's fine. People can join and figure it out as they go along. Okay, I'm just going to repeat what I said for kind of logistics. So, hi everyone who's joining this panel. We've got a couple questions planned for our panelists, but if you can see, there's a Q&A feature that you guys can use at any point in during the panel. Feel free to put a question in there, and I might just toss it in there. So we'll also have a Q&A period at the end if we end up running out of questions. But again, feel free to ask them at any time using the chat feature. I'll be monitoring that. So we've got 5 amazing panelists today, and I'll give them a chance to introduce themselves in just a minute. But first, I wanted to just do a quick land acknowledgement. People are joining from all over the place, but I'm personally joining from Waterloo, Canada, and specifically the University of Waterloo, of which I am a student, is located on the traditional territory of the Ottawandaron or neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. In particular, it's located on land that was entrusted to the Six Nations, that was promised to the Six Nations, the Haudenosaunee specifically, as stated in the Haldimand Tract of 1784. This tract is entrusted 6 miles of land on either side of the Grand River to the Haudenosaunee, but of the original 950,000 acres initially dedicated to this tract, only about 48,000 remain. So to put that into perspective, that's only about 5% of what they originally promised. So it's important that we recognize that the benefits we reap from attending universities like mine have been at the expense of the Six Nations. And as scientists who use this land for furthering and acquiring knowledge, we would do well to be conscious of our presence on stolen land and learn what we can from the Indigenous people that have lived and are still living in and around this area. Now, with that said, I'm the moderator for today. I'm Kat. I'm a 4th-year undergraduate student studying mathematics at the University of Waterloo. And I would like to now give the chance for each of our panelists to introduce themselves. So for your introductions, please give your name, your institution, and your role in that institution, and how your work fits into the national context of quantum technology development in your country. And lastly, I would like for you all to give a definition of how you would define responsible quantum innovation or quantum ethics. Like, what does it mean to you specifically? So Joan, would you like to go first?
Happily. Thank you so much, Kat, and welcome to everybody on the panel. And it's wonderful to see so many folks in the audience. My name is Joan. I wear a couple of different hats. Up here, I represent the Quantum Ethics Project, which helped organize this event. I also work for the Center for Quantum Networks as a Quantum Society Research Fellow, where I conduct research in education and workforce development, as well as algorithmic benchmarking. Finally, I also work as the Deputy Director of Education and Workforce Development for QSense at CU Boulder. My work fits into the national context of quantum in the United States in a couple of ways. Foremost, and the reason for my involvement with the Quantum Ethics Project and creating that organization, my goal is to try and advance the conversation in the United States of how can we not just invest money in quantum technological development, but how can we ensure that those investments are translating into a technology that benefits all people? In addition, the work that I do in algorithmic benchmarking is primarily focused on trying to mitigate the hype that can sometimes be found in the quantum technological field. I want to make it as easy as possible for people to understand how far along quantum computing is specifically, and my benchmarking work focuses around those sorts of topics. The way I might define quantum ethics or responsible quantum innovation, I think it's an important question. Because my definition isn't the only one. And that's kind of, I'm interested to hear what the other panelists have to say. For me, responsible quantum innovation is a process where researchers see their role not just in publishing papers and getting their gadget to work, but thinking about the long-term and short-term societal impact that their research and technology are going to have, and trying to work with the community, the broader community, their community of researchers and policymakers to ensure that their technology is developed in such a way that ideally it harms no one and benefits everyone.
Awesome. Thank you, Joan. Next, I'll just go down the line from what I see. Zeki, would you like to go next? Just your name, where you work, how your work fits into national context, and how would you define quantum ethics?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, and thanks for the invitation. And it's a great panel, and it's a privilege to be here. So I'm Zeki. I'm currently a researcher and a project coordinator at Karlsruhe Institute of Technology in Germany, Karlsruhe. Our particular institute is called Institute for Technology Assessment and Systems Analysis. And technology assessment, as understood in Germany, the German word is Technikfolgenabschätzung. So it is technology consequences assessment rather than just technology assessment. So we are focusing on the intended and unintended consequences of emerging technologies. Our specific work at the institute is focused on TA, like technology assessment for quantum technologies, landscaping, education outreach research, ethical, legal, societal aspects research. ETAS as an institute has been around for more than 20 years, and we have some good relationships with the German Bundestag through TAB, which is a technology assessment bureau that is located in Berlin. And we are also part of the European Parliamentary Technology Assessment Network in Brussels. So it's like the STOA. And in terms of how we define responsible innovation and or quantum ethics, I would say that we approach it more from a responsible technology development lens. So there are potential benefits of any new technology, potential harms for any new technology. Certain groups focus more on the benefits, like move fast and break things, but it will pan out in the end. And certain groups focus more on the harms, on mitigating the harms, and it might go a little bit too far, like stifling innovation and trying to just limit any kind of technology development. So the way we kind of focus on responsible technology development is somewhere in between, trying to balance the benefits and the harms, and also to acknowledge that benefits for whom, harms towards who. So those two are kind of targeting different stakeholder groups within society. So we are trying to just make them more explicit, make the entire process more participatory, and just bring all the stakeholders together. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'm excited to hear from you, especially considering that Europe is kind of ahead of the game in terms of like regulation and policy on technologies. So that's great, thank you. Next up on my screen is Ray. Would you like to go?
Yes. Again, thank you very much for asking me to participate in here. My name is Raymond LaFlamme, and I'm on a very quantum way on a superposition of being at the University of Waterloo and the Parameter Institute also in Waterloo. In my day-to-day work, I'm interested in quantum control, quantum error correction, and I've been doing work in this area for the last 25 years. But I also have kind of different hats that I wear, and one of them is being a co-chair for the Canadian Quantum Strategy Council, which is a council which advised the Canadian government about their strategy on quantum information, quantum computing. How did I get interested in responsible quantum innovation? I got involved through something called the Council of Canadian Academies, who asked to write a report for the government on how to stimulate adoptions of quantum technologies. And through this panel, I met a bunch of really interesting people, and one of them was Moritz Kopp, who has been one person spearheading this. And although I was interested in responsible quantum innovation, I didn't know a lot. And as an academic, I didn't know how to ask the right questions and how to formulate them and how to kind of find the right way. And Moritz has been kind of my guide on there. And we've recently, for the Canadian Council of Academies, wrote a report called Quantum Potential. And if you Google quantum potential and CCA, I think you'll kind of figure it out. And if you don't find it, send me an email, and then I can give it to you. And part of this, there is a part on 10 principles for responsible quantum innovation. So we can talk a little bit more as we go and in the hour, and at least give my view on it. And really, I should say, Moritz is the expert of putting this together. Part of my role in this paper was to ensure that all these principles obeys the laws of physics, to be sure that kind of the speed of light was not violated, and many other things, that quantum is not equal to magical, even if it does some incredible things. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Ray. I'm looking forward to hearing from your perspective as well, as an academic, because you're right. It's not always obvious for academics to get involved in these things. Next up for me is Joan. Would you like to present yourself?
Thank you, Katia. I'm Joan Olemou. I'm based in Toronto. I'm co-founder of Quantik. Quantik, we are a non-profit organization based in Toronto, Canada. And then our focus is really responsible quantum. And in the responsible quantum space, we are focused on 4 pillars. The first one will be ethical development. The second one is inclusive and diverse workforce. And the third one is sustainable quantum technology, the environmental impact. And then the last one, not the least, it's around equitable access to quantum technology. And then our vision is to really contribute to Canada national strategy, becoming front runner in the quantum space. And then for us, you know, historically, Canada has been investing in quantum research and innovation. And then this should not be just a technological breakthrough, because like we really need to see things in a holistic way and then think about what is the benefit of quantum for society at large, and then what is the impact in our planet. And then for us, in the context of Quantik, the definition of responsible quantum, it's the conscientious development of quantum technology that will consider and then actively address ethical, legal, social, and environmental, and then economic concern related to quantum technology. And then for me personally, responsible quantum, I think like that term really need to transcend the scientific boundary. We should not be just thinking about, you know, qubit or the technological breakthrough, or thinking about adding new functionality. I think like we really need to think about it in holistic way, and then, but like in terms of impact, what is the impact on our society? What is the impact on our planet? And then I strongly believe, you know, responsible quantum innovation need really to ensure in every step in the quantum research, development, or deployment, and then beyond, we're doing that in respect of integrity and then accountability, and then that will really include, as I was mentioning, ethical development. And then for ethical development, we really would like to make sure whatever technology we are developing in the quantum space that align with respect of privacy, security, and as well other ethical concern related to the technology itself. And then that will include as well diversity and inclusion, because like I strongly believe we need to build diverse workforce in the quantum space that will reflect the diversity of our society, diverse perspective. And then we really need to include that in the innovation process, because like that will really foster creative, innovative solution. And then in terms of sustainability, and I think like all the time we talk about quantum and then all these things, but we need as well to think about the environmental impacts. So I do think like this is a really early stage. So we really have the opportunity across the quantum industry to include sustainable practices and then have commitment to the environmental impact of quantum. And then the last piece is equitable access. And then as for me, we need to make sure, with quantum, we don't have the quantum divide. What I mean by that, it's, quantum will create or exacerbate the existing inequality. We don't want quantum to do that. We really need to make sure everyone, the society at large, can benefit can react from the benefit of quantum technology. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear more about your organization. From what Joan had told me, I really enjoy RQI-centric organizations. It's nice to see them popping up more in Canada. So thank you. Last but not least, Taqi.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on the panel. My name is Taqi Raza. I am an assistant professor in the EC department of UMass Amherst. And I am also the co-PI with Center of Quantum Networks, which is building the quantum internet in the US. So I am the co-PI in one of the trusts in CQN, which is working to ensure that society is well prepared for broad, affordable, and equitable access to the quantum internet and its economy. In CQN, we are studying the social and policy implication of building quantum internet for the future. And in this respect, in particular, we are looking into the three aspects of it, which is what I do. One is how to ensure a robust quantum key distribution protocols, how we can ensure provable quantum communication, and how to sustain the privacy policies. The way I look the quantum ethics or responsible quantum internet is from very objective point of view. So I want to develop tools which will output where the quantum ethics violations will occur or are going to occur. The way I do is my algorithm takes the quantum protocols as an input. It will give some configurations and ethical constraints to this protocol. And then I design the algorithm, which is more like a formal methods approach. And then it uses these constraints on the protocol development and then gives an output where the protocol is going to develop unethical or unresponsible quantum technology. So in this way, I can go back to the researchers who are developing the protocol and I say, okay, hey, I mean, this protocol will violate these policies and why not you think to update your approach? So in this way, because this aligns well with what I do. So I'm like more focused on developing what exactly can go wrong in the future if we go towards this protocol. So I'm here to discuss more on that. Thanks.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's a nice definition, I think, to put kind of standardized practices in place for checking ethical considerations. I think we need some more of that, so that's great. Thank you. So for the first question I have listed here, I wanted to just kind of give the audience a bit of a baseline as to what the current state of quantum ethics and RQI is in everyone's respective country and or institutions. So what do you guys panelists think the current state of responsible quantum innovation is in your country and or institution? What do you think is being done? What do you think we need more of? That kind of thing. So Joan, would you like to go first again? Putting you on the spot.
Sure, I can. Other folks could go first too, though, if we want to do that.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So I think Joan and I can discuss it together because we are
You're
part
both
of
from
CQ,
CQ, yeah.
we can bring the discussion in one perspective. So yeah.
Sure.
Love it. Taqi,
So
you
please
go
go ahead
first.
first, and then I will add.
Okay, all right, fine. One of us has got to go. Okay. Also, first, before I get into this, I just want to say several of the points that were brought up during the introductions. I was like burning in my seat. I wanted to interrupt and start a discussion there. So, Joan and Ray and others, like we got to circle back on some of the points y'all made. Those can't be left undiscussed. That was some cool stuff. So I've got a little bit of a joint perspective. Certainly, Taqi and I, we're both appointed at the Center for Quantum Networks. We both work in that center's, they call it Societal Impacts Research Thrust 4. But I also just recently moved to back to the US from Canada. So I have a little bit of a perspective for there too, but I'll focus on the US because I think Ray can certainly speak to the Canadian context very well. In the United States, writ large, we have a couple of places that occur to me that stand out. Moritz Kopp was already mentioned, and his Stanford Center for Responsible Quantum Innovation is a year or two old, and I think has to be mentioned if we're going to talk about what the United States is doing in terms of investigating these sorts of topics. And the Center for Quantum Networks is also a standout organization. You know, it's my understanding that our societal impacts research thrust was a bit of a new requirement from the National Science Foundation, that they asked that in order for the CQN to come to be, that we would want to have this thrust for. Taqi, you may know more about this. You can correct me if I'm getting the story wrong, but my understanding is that since the CQN kind of got the ball rolling, multiple, when the NSF has funded subsequent engineering research centers, these have all had some sort of configuration of folks who are looking into responsible innovation. And this is captured in our SEIC, SEIC, the Stakeholder Engagement Impact Collaborative, which is essentially a network of all of these responsible innovation researchers at these different centers. Now, I'll point out that the CQN, to my knowledge, is still the only center that is specifically working on quantum. The other engineering research centers that have societal impact aren't working in the quantum space. And aside from those two, Moritz Kopp at Stanford and the CQN, I'm not aware of additional places where responsible innovation is funded, people can work on it. So there's certainly some improvement to be done. I think especially when you consider the scale of the investment that the United States has put into quantum, that we should see more of that translate into funding for centers or universities or companies even to create a responsible innovation division and hire researchers and folks to work in this area.
Okay, great. I just want to add on top of it. So actually, when I attend the PI's meeting or the center-wide meeting, one of the discussion that we often have, the folks who are working on the technical thrusts, are how we can, participate in the quantum ethics. And I mean, it reminds me the history, if you look at the history of the internet, because my background is from a classical internet, is when the internet was designed at that time, no one has thought, okay, this would become such a popular technology and it would drive the whole innovation. And because my PhD is from UCLA, and like I have my mentors and my professors who have witnessed the birth of the internet at UCLA at that time. So what I understand is the protocols that were designed at that time were thought of like everyone in the world. Everyone is a good person, right? So they have no idea how attacks can happen and how the attacks can become so complicated. So if you look the history, like every technology, like HTTP, right? So there was simple HTTP, and then S, which is security, was added later on. DNS, same story, DNSSEC, TCP, TLS, right? Just name it. Every internet protocol was designed for good actors, and then they thought, okay, it's not working, and then they have, keep adding things. And it's still broken. I mean, if you see any security conference or ethics conference in the internet, you will see every year there are tons of papers discussing about how to, bypass TLS security, for example, right, or VPN tunneling and so on. So that gave me the idea how we can fix the development of quantum internet from the start, from the beginning, right? And that's why when I talk to researchers, they say, yeah, what you're talking about is what we agree what you're saying, but I don't know how can I improve my protocols or my algorithms or my technology as quantum ethics enabled. And that's gave me the idea that, as I said in my introduction, is we give you exactly what went wrong in your protocol, and then we expect that we will hold you responsible. That, okay, we gave you the feedback exactly how you can improve it, and you have not improved it, right? So that's my way of doing it. And obviously, this is just that's a constraint metric is one of the input. As I look forward working with you all, then we can add more depth into this work and to make sure that we have a robust and ethical quantum internet for the future use.
And panelists, feel free to chime in if there's points that are made while we're answering one of the questions. We can get the conversation flowing a little bit. Just to bounce off of that a little bit, I think having an objective verifier is crucial. But I also think that the scale of the investment in responsible quantum innovation, at least in my perspective, is one of the primary challenges, because we don't even have the level of research that we need to be able to adequately anticipate what some of these ethical concerns are. Taqi, your work is a great example of what a researcher can do when they're supported to work in this area. But I'm always thinking about how me and all of my colleagues, all of us here on this panel and people that we know, we're all finite. We have a finite list of problems that we're aware of. And if we don't add more people into this conversation to do research and work on these problems, we'll likely get caught by surprise by something we didn't anticipate.
So
I
maybe I'll
completely
chime
agree.
in. I'll chime in a little bit about the Canadian perspective on this.
Yep.
And I think Jean would probably agree with me that it's the very early days of responsible quantum innovation. And although it's not such early days for developing the STEM part or kind of the technology piece of it. And if I look at pretty much all the national quantum strategies around the world, I think there's 13 or 14 countries who have these strategies. They are very, very focused on the technology development. And slowly they are getting involved a little bit. And I would say in Canada, same kind of things that we see. The national quantum strategy is about quantum communication or building a quantum computer or developing quantum sensors. And there doesn't seem to have been much kind of realization that we have to start thinking about how do we do this responsibly. And as you say, John, if I look at the amount of money today in Canada that is dedicated to responsible quantum innovation and putting the framework for this, it's tiny, 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 tiny. And again, Jean can tell you from somebody who has the boots on the ground his viewpoint of this, but certainly as a co-chair of the National Quantum Strategy Council, The good thing is that it has been realized in the discussion of the council, and I should point out that the council is not, it's not us, members of the council, who develop the strategy. The government has developed the strategy. The council is there to help giving feedback and guide the next step in that strategy. So it has, the members of the councils have made some comments about the fact that if you look at the funding right now, it's all related to National Science Research and Engineering Council, not with the social sciences, for example, who would have interest of or have the tools or some of the tools who kind of thinks about this a little bit more, or it's more usual for them to think about these types of questions. And this is something that we're starting to do in Canada to involve people which are broader than the STEMs, but again, very, very, very early days. And one thing that I like Taqi's comment on thinking about how the internet started. And if I go and talk to my colleagues who develop technologies for quantum, they all think that we are all good actors around the world trying to kind of do great things that kind of suddenly society will pick up. In my interaction with the Council of Canadian Academies with this report, quantum potentials, we're half and half. STEM people and kind of more social science people. And I found this fascinating discussion. And they were on that. If you want people to adopt these quantum technologies, people have to feel safe about them. And how do you do this? And responsible quantum innovation is one tool to kind of make people think about it. When I was the director of the Institute for Quantum Computing, kind of 20 years ago, kind of starting this in Canada, again, very early days, I certainly, in my plans, responsible quantum innovation was certainly not a topic which was critical for IQC to start at the beginning. On the other hand, out of the three objectives of the Institute, one was, of course, doing the research and develop research expertise and international reputation. The second one was to train people to learn what is quantum and how to use it, how to develop these technologies. But the third one, which was very unusual, I think, for a university, and I remember to get pushback from the administration of the university, which was a communication team. And the role of the communication team was to ensure that the research which was developed at the Institute doesn't remain only inside the Institute, but get propagated to a broader view so that society in general learn about it. And we see this also from the Perimeter Institute, an outreach part of the goals of the Institute. So we do have parts of it and kind of a little bit of seeds being put, but definitely a lot more can be done. And I think Jean can probably say a few more things from kind of his organization point of view.
Yeah, thank you, Ray. I totally agree. In Canada now, it's really the infancy for responsible quantum. And then it's why I strongly believe, all stakeholders from academia, non-for-profits, policymakers, and then corporates, we all need to work together. And then I think most importantly, we should learn from the past, because the way I see it, historically, we have nanotechnology, we have AI, more or less, we have some lesson learned from those technology, and then we have some governance there, so we can start building on that. And then I do think the best way to do these things, it's first of all, as you guys were mentioning, it's starting by the outreach, making quantum more accessible for the general public, because sometime during the discussion, if someone he come from non-technical background, for example, for superposition, when they talk about Schrodinger cat, you can understand. But other terms in quantum, the general public, it's not accessible. So the moment people don't understand what is it, So that will be very hard to advocate around that. I do think like one big part can be that education, but like really making sure there is no hype. And then after that, I do believe the way as well we can approach building responsible quantum that will cover 3 layers, because we need to look at from the technical standpoint, and then we need to look at from the ethical standpoint, and then social and legal standpoint. And then the technical standpoint, I think like there is on the short term, because like now, if you look at, there is no governance around quantum technology, there is no standardization, there is no accountability. So I do think like those are pockets we need to build around the technology itself. And then for ethics standpoint as well, I do think like it's why it's really interesting, you know, research people from academia and then non-for-profit organization and then policymaker. It's really working on concrete research project. We can really show to public institution there is gap in terms of principle. What is the principle around quantum? What is the different criteria? And then what is the framework? And then after that, I think like when we have built all those building blocks, we can now start having conversation, okay, putting in place the norms, the regulation, and then legislation. I do think like there is a lot of work to be done. And then I believe by using our past experience with other technology, it's something we can do. And I believe we need to all work together, because like one single organization, it's not going to be able to move the needle. Thank you.
I completely agree. There's a bunch of questions that are really good in the chat, and I've also got some other questions I want to ask, but first I wanted to just give Zeki the chance to give the European perspective.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks. So, I mean, compared to US, it's not exactly compared to this, but you know, Europe is really federated. There are 27 different countries in the European Union and UK and Switzerland. But I might say that I kind of can echo some of the other panelists in the sense that we are still in the early days of this, this build-up. So most of the activities going on in Europe, I would say, is more focused on the capacity building for responsible quantum technologies, rather than actually trying to implement certain regulations or trying to come up with certain, final rules, because we don't even know whether it will be like superconducting devices or ion traps. Will it, just cloud or, on-premise? So there are so many different variables that we are not really sure about the future of these technologies. So it's really difficult to anticipate the potential societal impact of implementing these technologies into the society. In the TI field and also responsible innovation, there's this thing called the Cavendish dilemma. So in the early days of the technology, you have much more control over the trajectory of technology, but you have very little evidence of the societal impact that those technologies will result in. So initially, I would say that right now, efforts in Europe are more focused on, trying to develop this anticipatory build-up, capacity building, but also to kind of create these different scenarios depending on which kind of implementations are going to be made in the technical domain. Some, very solid examples. In Netherlands, there's a Center for Quantum and Society, and also the Quantum Delta Netherlands have an Action Line 4, which has ethical, legal, and societal aspects, in different universities. In France, there's the Grenoble ecosystem. They have this project Taqi, so they're focusing on the sustainability aspect and also ethics aspect. In Germany, there's Fraunhofer efforts. At ETAS, we are also very actively involved. In TUM, there's the Quantum Social Lab. In Austria, there's the Innsbruck Quantum Ethics Lab. UK is not part of EU, but still part of Europe. So they have the NQCC and, the Oxford Responsible Technologies Institute. So there are all these, groups working. But I would say that, especially after ChatGPT, we got a bit of a hit, because most of the people who are focusing on this had to pivot to AI, and focus their attention to AI. So quantum is getting a little bit less attention compared to what's going on in AI right now.
Maybe I'll make a comment, Zeki, on this. Is what can we learn from AI for quantum? Like,
You stole my question.
I mean, I have a very quick answer there, but it might be a bit, you know, contrary to the common wisdom. People talk a lot about what can we learn from the AI ethics, you know, successes, but I would say that we should learn from their failures. Because I suppose that we all remember the stupid discussions on, oh, should an automated vehicle kill a grandmother or 3 puppies, you know. So there were some mistakes made along the way of building responsible AI. Right now, they have a much stronger base. So we should not only focus on their successes, but also look at how they failed in the process that led to, you know, ChatGPT and, you know, algorithmic bias and all the discrimination stuff that came up with these things, which could have been avoided earlier, but we failed to, you know, properly address those.
This kind of ties into something like a similar question that I wanted to ask, which is how can we ensure that our response to, you know, emerging quantum technologies are proactive and not reactive the way they have been with stuff like AI, or Taqi talked about, you know, the internet. A lot of the stuff comes after the fact, and, you know, it makes sense to some extent that it's hard to predict, you know, all of the impacts something could have, especially a big new technology. But what do you think, panelists, can be done to try and minimize the damage, at least before it happens?
I would say start early and before we have the technology. Although there's all these programs around the world on quantum technologies, we don't have a quantum computer yet. We have very interesting prototypes developed, but we don't have a quantum computer who does things that could go out of control yet. So by starting right now, then we have to educate people in general, but also our peers, the ones who are developing these technologies, that when they do things, they think about this. And it is certainly me as a physicist. I've certainly not been trained in my degrees, and it is something in my department that we don't talk about, the kind of social impact of what we do. Or maybe sometime around a beer, kind of on a Friday night, we can have a few things, but we never put it at the forefront of where we are as scientists and technologists. So bring this, I think, early, and having some more thoughtful place. And I think one of the challenge that we have is universities are really built on silos. You have physics, you have chemistry, you have math, then you have the art science. And when I talk to higher ups in the university, they are really keen on doing kind of multidisciplinary things. But when you tell them this cost and funding agencies are not set up for that, then suddenly nobody kind of really helps to make these things happen. So trying to be more multidisciplinary in this field is important. I think quantum has a great thing because it does bring people from many areas. Certainly for STEM, it's pretty obvious. But I think the work on quantum research innovation brings people from the social science, kind of legal people, economists. And when I hear comments from my physicist colleagues about the economic impact of quantum technologies, I kind of laugh a little bit because I don't know where these numbers come from. And sometimes when I see reports of big accounting firms on how much quantum things will be worth in 5 years from now, I also laugh because I don't understand how these numbers come from. But maybe people who are economists kind of can take them with a grain of salt and make sense of those. So I think multidisciplinary education, not only for population in general, but us working in this field, I think is important.
I just
Yeah,
want
I just want to add here. So yeah, so just a quick comment. So one thing is, yes, we should start early. The other thing is we need to learn lesson from related technologies. I mean, we talk about AI. I mean, why, the question is why AI is biased? Because we feed biased data, right? The AI is just learning from the data, right? And I mean, some technologies have actually learned from the past. One good example is telecom, right? 4G, 5G networks. They have learned the mistakes from the internet folks that they have done, right? So whenever now, let's say if you turn power on your device, the first thing your device does, it performs a handshake, authentication and encryption, right? So now it's very hard to break 5G security compared to internet security, right? So I just want to add, like, learn the lesson from related technologies and try to find analogy. I mean, how we can do a similar thing and learn it and improve this technology. And then getting back to this raised comments, that then create a feedback loop towards the workforce development, right? So you learn it, like feed it back to workforce development and then learn it again and feedback. So this is a constant process so that we have a responsible and ethical workforce on the ground, because those are the people who are working in the companies after 15, 20, 30 years, right? And they are going to impact the decision making for the companies who are going behind, dollar values, like the profits, and the folks who are going to make the policies in the future, right? So yeah, I just want to add on that.
There's so many things about this conversation that I want to address. I almost feel like we need to have a panel in superposition.
Yeah.
But I'm actually not going to address the question myself. I just want to stir in two audience questions that I think will add some nice dimension to this conversation. And I think the two questions have an interesting relationship to each other. So one audience member asked, and I think this is an important piece of background, because all of us here, we study this topic, but maybe we can clarify what are our biggest worries for unintended negative uses of quantum technology. We're having this big conversation about how to get it right, how to learn from AI, how to do things responsibly. What are the consequences if we don't do anything? That's audience question number one. And then a second question kind of looks at the opposite spectrum of this. Let's say we go all the way in on responsible innovation, and this question, audience question asks, how can responsible innovation be motivated while also maintaining national security efforts? I think
Can I start with the second one?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, because I mean, I have a really, I would say that it's an interesting example. So, in Europe, as you know, after the Russian invasion, things got changed quite a bit in terms of public perspective. And from the European Defense Fund, there was this panel, and they were talking about before the invasion, defense was considered on the same level as tobacco and porn in terms of investment decisions. Right now, Europe is going through a transformation in that regard. So one thing to connect the responsible innovation and national security would be to argue that, okay, security itself is a social benefit. So it's not necessarily put in, something that is opposed to responsible efforts, but how can we do that security aspect more responsibly rather than, just limiting, personal rights, limiting certain budgetary items in the name of national security. And so that's the discussion going on in Europe right now, I would say.
I love that. I'm just going to add on to that because in the United States, national security is essentially the only issue that can get a bill passed in our federal government. That's how our national quantum strategy was passed in 2018. It was passed with unanimous approval under the Trump administration, which I think is a remarkable sentence to say out loud. And the reason for this, at least one of the core reasons, is that the political rhetoric around why should we fund quantum in the first place in the United States was motivated by, framing this as an arms race with groups like China. And the United States seeing a national security threat of not having the best quantum technology. That's how it got funded. So this question of how is responsible innovation, how does it relate to national security? If in the United States, we're going to get within even within spitting distance of funding responsible innovation, we have to phrase it in these terms too. And I would say that funding responsible innovation and ensuring that quantum technologies are developed so that they don't harm our nation is the definition of national security. When we talk about AI, shredding the fabric of our social discourse and our society, that isn't good for our national security. In the United States, our adversaries have found a chink in our armor, and that weakness is by exploiting the current kind of social media ecosystem. Folks are more polarized than ever, and that environment is being driven partially by recommendation algorithms, social media companies who find it profitable to drive divisive discourse. And so there's an example of a technology in the AI space where by unleashing it on society without any guardrails, we are undermining our own security as a nation. And if quantum is switched online tomorrow and somebody has access to Shor's algorithm and they can undermine the security upon which our digital lives are lived, that level of cyber terrorism is not going to be good for national security.
And
I just think
I would
like
have not only for national security wouldn't be good, but for all individuals. Suddenly your bank account security disappears. And so your medical records that you are seeing through the internet suddenly are becoming public. So indeed, I think national security is part of thinking about this quantum responsible technologies. In fact, in these 10 principles, in this work on the 10 principles for responsible quantum innovation with Moritz, we group 10 into 3 parts, and one of them is safeguarding. And there's information security part of there. We have to discuss dual use of these technologies, and we have to discuss this quantum race that we see around. And before thinking of a specific solution, a broad discussion of this, seeing the many parts, issues related to them is really important.
And I just want to highlight, as I'm not going to add anything new, but in this discussion, we're also answering the second question, which was, give us some examples of our worst fears of what quantum technology might do that would harm society. So Shor's algorithm, I can say it very clearly, the first ever application of a quantum computer was cyber terrorism. This conversation is as old as 1995. It's as old as I am. And there's certainly more. Ray mentioned dual use technologies. People could use the same technology that we want to think developing, beneficial new drugs with fewer side effects could also be used to develop new toxins and bioweapons. So these are just kind of 2 examples, but I'll let the other folks chime in as well.
Thank you, Joan. Did you have something to add?
Yeah, I was saying, I believe, for the dual use and then security related, we can borrow something what we have done for nuclear weapon, because like there is a treaty for non-proliferation. So I do think, internationally, we should sit and then start having those type of treaty rather than waiting when something will happen and then that time we're talking about the treaty. I think like it's very important because like everyone is completely aware you can use quantum for military usage and then all these things. I do think like it's something in the national strategy from different countries. I didn't see that. I do think like it's something we need to take seriously and then start thinking about those things, because like for nuclear weapon, we have the treaties. We can learn from that and then put something safeguard and to avoid difficult situations. Thank you.
And I love this example, Jean, because quantum, nuclear weapons are an example of quantum technology. It's an old one, but it's probably Christopher Nolan did all of us quantum ethicists a favor by making a 3-hour-long movie about the first ever quantum ethicist, someone who lived through seeing the negative consequences of building a quantum technology with no guardrails.
Yes, I completely agree. There was another question in the chat that I want to get to. Specifically, it's for Professor LaFlamme. They say, I'm about to graduate from my undergrad in mathematical physics at U Waterloo, and they're interested in doing further work on quantum policy, specifically upon graduating. However, they say they have to leave IQC in Waterloo to look internationally for opportunities because there's a lack of programs here. There aren't really any quantum policy ethics work going on around here for them to work on. So what, if anything, does the IQC plan on doing to create programming in this area in the future? Anything interdisciplinary or like scholarships? What are your thoughts on that?
I was director of the Institute for 15 years, and I have not been the director for nearly 7 years now. So I cannot speak as kind of a leader of IQC anymore. You're absolutely right. That right now, the IQC is refocused on the STEM part. And although there's a few people on campus on the social science side, which are kind of interested in this issue. So one person that comes to mind to me is Kim Delat, who has done a report on how to make more equitable and diverse and inclusive proposal for quantum information for NRC. So she's definitely interested in that part. But again, it's as I mentioned earlier, it's very early days. So you won't see a big program coming out on quantum ethics tomorrow morning, but people are getting more and more interested. And certainly I see interest from students and postdocs related to this. And so it has to get infused to my colleagues. So I try to kind of help a little bit in that direction, but we can unfortunately kind of not having a program for you in particular as you're kind of very, very timely. But you might want to look at people around in this panel and look at what these people, where they are. And going away from IQC is not such a bad thing. You will learn about a different view from different places, and hopefully we'll be able to bring you back to Waterloo in the future.
I love this question because this is kind of moving us towards some of the discussion I was hoping we could have on this panel. Because our topic is like, how do we work together to develop leadership in responsible quantum technologies? And for me, that question should translate into tangible, like a tangible to-do list. People have different positions in their various nations and centers, but all of us can do something to create more capacity. As Zeki said, they're really focusing on capacity building. And I think this student's story kind of reflects my own. One of the reasons that I left Waterloo as a graduate student was this issue that Ray has already mentioned, which is that departments can tend to be very siloed. And when I pitched quantum ethics research as a very first semester PhD student to my combinatorics and optimization department, I was told that interdisciplinary research that discusses these sorts of societal topics was not fit for the department. And so obviously, absolutely, the gears are heavy and they turn slow. But how can, I think this kind of creates an opportunity for all of us on this panel to turn the panel into something very productive, where how can we use this time in our discussion to think through ways that we individually can work to advance responsible innovation, and how can then we support one another? For my own sake, I'll maybe just give an example of what I mean. At the Center for Quantum Networks, one of the challenges has been precisely this siloing, where folks from Thrust 4 are often unable to substantively collaborate with the other more technical research thrusts, in part because we're just taught to speak different languages as academics. A social scientist and an engineer that builds quantum repeaters come from very different academic disciplines, and they speak different languages. And so one program that I recently proposed at the annual retreat for the Center for Quantum Networks was an integration project where called the Responsible Quantum Internet Project, where we kind of facilitate matching, where folks from technical thrusts are matched with folks with ideas from the societal impact side to develop an interdisciplinary research project to conduct over the course of a year and result in a paper and potentially engage students and kind of help, as we were just saying, create more capacity. So that's an example. You know, obviously it'll be dependent on whether the program is funded and supported at a level that we can grow it. But that's an idea of something on my side I've been really hoping can build more capacity in this space.
And
Great.
I'm going to add a place, increase awareness of the importance of responsible quantum innovation.
Specifically with funders, folks who have access, the ability to make it possible for an undergrad to work on a summer project or a graduate student to work for a year on publishing a paper.
Absolutely. And by the way, thank you to Katia and Joan to organize this panel, because this is a piece of bringing more awareness. But I would say to many of the conferences around the world that talks about quantum, having a panel who talks about responsible quantum innovation is a good thing. So all of us and people in the audience can help making this happen. So I have noticed that in Canada, there's a bunch of small conferences kind of that different institutes are putting together. And now they are starting to kind of catch on this. And they are certainly have had many requests of give me some name of people who could be on these panels. So I think there's definitely the beginning of interest, but we have to make the social science people really interested also, that it cannot be only the STEM people. So we have to convince our colleagues on the other side of the university or the other side of industry, that kind of part, legal people who kind of can bring them in. And by doing this, I think one step further is policymakers. And I think it's thanks for what's happening to AI that help us, thanks to the kind of Oppenheimer movie, because a much broader section of population get kind of hear about these issues. And so it's easier to pass the message that it is important for our field.
Absolutely. Having it more popular in the media definitely helps. I know I can tell Joan is kind of burning to answer this one question in the chat. I think it's a nice question as well. Someone said, my concern coming from a developing country is that the national security for my home country will not be enough. I wonder if the developed countries such as yours, so Canada, USA, Germany, are also concerned about this power inequality. So in other words, not only defending themselves, but not being adversarial to others. It's a tough question. What do you guys think?
I usually talk first, so I'm not going to do that this time.
I mean, I might maybe say that the person who wrote this would be interested in checking out the NATO's quantum strategy, because this discussion is really important in the sense that we can be pushing for equality and also bringing everybody on board, but also from the national security perspective, there's this topic of strategic edge. So equality is something that is usually considered as something bad from a strategic perspective, because it doesn't give you deterrence against your certain adversarial countries. And I think this really ties back neatly to what Joan said. Trust is a really important thing here, because if we want to do something international, like the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, then US need to be able to trust China, China need to be able to trust the EU need to be able to trust Russia, and this is not a technology problem. So as a more STEM-oriented people, I don't think the real solution comes from being a more responsible technology developer, let's say. This might be like a pessimistic thing, but I don't think we can be the ones to kind of solve this related to quantum technology, because it is part of a much larger issue.
Yeah, and this kind of ties into what everyone has been touching on, in the sense that we need to bring in people who are not purely STEM. We need to bring in policymakers. We need to bring in the people from social scientists because they actually know how to take all these ideas and put them into place to make actual change. Does anyone else want to add anything to this question?
Yeah, I just would like to add something. I think like I agree with Zeki. And then I think as well, what we can do here, for example, there is certain countries that do not have the financial power, you know, to be involved in the hardware development and then so on. I do think like it's where the equity piece is very important. What I mean by equity, we can have you know, specific scholarship or something to train people from those countries, because like if they can have access to that knowledge, we are not even talking about the W's, but for these people to be able to reap the benefit of quantum. And then I do think it's you know, people like technology company, for example, that is a great example. Now quantum, you can access it through the cloud and then something like that. You know, they should have, you know, these people should have somehow access, you know, to quantum computer. And then if they're doing that at school, and then, you know, they have access, and then they can train themselves. Because like, I do think if that equity aspect, it's not involved in the development of the technology, you know, down of the road, there will be more inequality and then more issue. You know, what we don't want, it's you know, the rich countries, they are the only one who can have the technology and then everything. I think it's why, for example, the project Joan you are doing around the benchmarking, it's open source. You know, we should encourage more open source innovation.
Absolutely.
You know, collaborative environment. I do think this is the only way we can bring that equity piece, because like if it's open source, well, anyone from, you know, Nigeria, whatever, you can have access, and then you can take things from there.
Yeah, and just briefly to mention the project that Joan is speaking of, I can put it in the chat. But we've partnered with the Unitary Fund and their community open source benchmarking platform Metric to empower people to see for themselves in the most, I think, accessible way possible how specific quantum algorithms perform, and contribute their own data and analysis to other algorithms, or the same algorithms we've implemented in other contexts. I'll put it in the chat. And to that audience member's question around international power imbalances, this is a critical issue and is represented by an entire quantum ethics institute in Geneva called the Open Quantum Institute. I put the link in the chat as well. It's a crucial issue, but I'll take it to Taqi.
Okay, I mean, great discussion. I just want to add one more thing, because I was just thinking, again, the lesson that I've learned from like other STEM areas. I believe one other thing that we, all of us need to do is we need to increase our presence in other, I mean, in quantum conferences. So for example, we need to arrange a workshop in IEEE Quantum Week, right? We start with smaller, we may have few submissions, but at least it will give us a platform to reach out to a wider audience, right? And in this way, that workshop, or maybe it can convert into the conference. So I give one example is there was a lot of debate on AI ethics and, you know, ethics in cloud computing and related areas. So there is a conference called ACM Conference on Fairness, Accounting, and Transparency, because it's a spin-off of the efforts they have had early in, like 5 to 10 years early in this space, and they have come up. It's a great conference, very well known, that you know, get together the folks from computer science, stats, law, social science, humanities, policies, right? So I think one of the effort we all can chime in is working towards like in a popular conference where we get a lot of quantum folks attending those conferences, and have a, you know, our impact and, you know, our foothold in those conferences. Yeah.
Zeki, aren't you? Isn't there going to be a European?
Yeah. So Yeah, last year we organized one. I mean, not we, but Mira and Natasha and Carolyn. And this year we are going to organize the second version. So if you are coming to IEEE Quantum Week, we will also accept paper submissions as well. So just feel free to just check our workshop.
And the Quantum Ethics Project also organized a workshop at IEEE last year. I wasn't able to attend, but Josie Meyer, one of our core collaborators, was able to run that, and I heard it went pretty well. This year we decided
it went pretty well.
Yeah. This year
it was really fun.
We decided not to duplicate efforts with our European partners, so we're just gonna glom onto. We're gonna let you guys all do all the work, and we're just gonna show up and look pretty.
Waiting for it.
I'm just trying to keep an eye on the time. I think maybe we can have the one last question that's been posted in the chat. They said, maybe this question is too narrow for this panel, but they're curious to know how non-proliferation of largely intangible quantum or AI tech would possibly work. And they said it seems to be a very different issue than controlling where bulky nuclear arsenals are deployed. It's true.
I like that question. I don't know how to answer it, but that's
I don't
really
know.
good question.
I can answer it because we have been discussing this for, I don't know, the last 2 years, how to do it. So initially, if I remember correctly, the discussions were more on, can we do this technically? For example, can we create certain mechanisms that allow identification of any kind of source, algorithms or short type algorithms, and just stop the devices from running them. I think that's not really possible because you can just change the algorithms in an amorphous way to different types of, and you can disguise them. But what you can do is you can create an international, maybe under UN, like a watchdog entity that kind of keeps track of cryptographically relevant quantum computers around the globe, so that you have some idea who has these capabilities, and if such an attack occurs, then you have a very short list of potential. Because contrary to the common belief, it is already a crime under the international law as well to attack critical civilian infrastructure. So we don't need to come up with an additional rule of, additional list of regulations to make it a crime again. We just need to be able to enforce those existing regulations.
That's great.
Thank you,
That's true.
Zeki,
That's a
for
point
saving us all.
Yeah, that's a point that I didn't think of. We just need to use our existing infrastructure and emphasize the fact that these are, maybe it's not as blatant as a nuclear bomb, but it is still a cause for concern and an international crime. I'm looking, we've got about 10 minutes. Does anyone have any last minute questions you want answered in the chat? Or panelists, do you have anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
Maybe I want to add something because I'm really enjoying this panel discussion, and thanks for creating this wonderful panel. One thing I might say is, when we are from a STEM perspective, when we are talking about we should bring the social science people in, and we should just join our forces, but I can also see why certain folks in the STEM areas are more hesitant towards this, because there is an entire line of thinking in social sciences that is only critical, so not constructive, but very restrictive in terms of technology development. And as a person whose career just depends on these devices actually making it and working in time, so not in 50 years but in 20 years, any kind of additional constraints and restrictions would be unwelcomed on your side. So what I would say is, as people coming from the responsible innovation or responsible technology development side, we should also be able to convince the more technically oriented colleagues that these ethics discussions or these responsibility discussions are not only restrictive, but they create alignment, they create social trust, they create enthusiasm in the younger generation to focus more on these topics. So we also need to be able to sell it to both the STEM field and the social science field as well. because otherwise it will just be, oh, you're just putting this additional burden on my work, which is already hard.
And I would add to that it helps the adoptions of these quantum technologies from industry and the rest of society. So without this, which makes me think of when we're mentioning the internet, I have two other examples of technologies that were developed where people have put some framework to guard them. One of them is GMO, and maybe all around the panel here, you're too young to remember in the early 2000 the hoopla about GMO and nanotechnology, and which certainly has slowed down the adoption of these technologies. And I agree there are places where safeguards were appropriate, but there are other places where these were good technology. And I would say cloning is another one. And maybe cloning is, and I'm not talking about quantum cloning, but the classical biology cloning, they're obvious because it relates to life. So this is easy to kind of bring to society. So things from there we can probably learn from also of, and I think it's Zeki who mentioned not only about the success, but the failure, and be sure that we don't repeat the same things to get to the same failure points.
And adding to Zeki's point about how we can sell the idea of collaborating with social scientists and participating in responsible innovation conversations to technologists, the way I put it is that responsible innovation questions lead to higher quality technical research. And there's an easy example from this. When I proposed and launched the Responsible Quantum Internet Project, I did so with 3 PhD students, each with a project of their own, to kind of give the audience an idea of what this project could look like if it were funded. And one of them was simply to assess the energy consumption requirements of the quantum internet, of all the components that would go into it, and then to give a final kilowatt hour per mile or kilometer number. And I was surprised that a center as big as the Center for Quantum Networks, with so many participating folks, so much investment on the technical side, hadn't answered this question. We're trying to build this huge apparatus that has a ton of dilution refrigerators at every single node, and we haven't looked into if this is even feasible for our power grid. That's a core technical question that should be answered, and it wasn't being answered until we started talking about responsible innovation questions. And the same is true in my own work. I was a quantum algorithm researcher, and then when I started thinking about ethics, I started thinking about hype, and that's where my benchmarking work has come from, trying to better align my research with the larger goals and rhetoric of my field has led to research that has been easier to get funded, and I believe is more impactful than the work I did before I became interested in responsible innovation. So technical researchers should see these conversations as an opportunity to improve their work.
I completely agree with you. It's interesting to see that hopefully we're moving towards a time where we're not treating this like I don't know about you, but from what I've noticed, there tends to be this attitude of division between social sciences and like hard sciences, like in STEM. And it'll be very interesting to see how both of those can improve when we start working together more often. We've got about 6 minutes left. Does anyone have any last minute thoughts you'd like to add? If not, I do want to thank everyone for attending this. Thank you all panelists for joining us today. This was a very interesting discussion. Thank you, Joan. Thank you, I think Ria's here. And thank you to the people at FemFis for helping me put this together and list all the questions. I hope all of you have an amazing rest of your week and hope you all survive your busy schedules from what I've been hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody so much. It was wonderful.
Yeah, thank you very much to the organizers, and Taqi, Zeki, Jean, Joan, and Katia. It was a pleasure to be on this panel.
Same here.
I dropped it into the
Thank you,
chat,
same.
but for anyone who isn't in the Discord server, the conversations like these happen in there all the time, and I look forward to seeing this conversation grow and continue, and working with all of you to make responsible quantum happen.
Yep.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.